The self-leveling laser near the low elevation side of the pool a few feet away from the painted circle, outside of the traveling route of the equipment used to dig out the pool. And to the best of your ability, level the top of the tripod with only your eye before attaching the laser. It does not have to be perfect. I use a self-leveling laser with a Spectrum receiver. This particular receiver has a 2-inch window above and below the intended point or grade for the foundation the pool will rest upon. The purple is the 4-inch reader window and must be set in the direction of the laser to be activated. So if the leveling rod is resting on higher elevation of greater than 2 inches, or resting on lower elevation of more than 2 inches, then the set foundation point, the receiver will not activate and give a reading. If the rod is resting on an elevation that is less than 2 inches higher, or resting where it is less than 2 inches lower, then the receiver will read and display the difference between the set foundation point and the point in question, and also display whether you need to subtract or add material to achieve the foundation point by displaying an arrow. An arrow up indicates dirt foundation should be added, and an arrow down indicates dirt needs to be subtracted to achieve the set foundation point. You can set your receiver to within different degrees of accuracy. I set my receiver to within 0.2 inches. Here are examples of 3 different points, one on grade with a straight line, one with the arrow up indicating material is to be added or presently at a lower elevation, and one with an arrow down indicating material is to be taken away or at a higher elevation. We use the self-leveling laser, Spectrum receiver, and leveling rod to allow one person to level the pool foundation, level the countersunk wall track blocks, and level the liner sand effectively. It is functionally necessary for professionals and novices alike. Initially, it is first important to find the correct point to measure the entirety of the pool foundation. Generally, that is at the lowest point on the painted foundation of the sod. Adjust the receiver on the leveling rod so that it indicates level grade at the lowest elevation within the painted pool foundation. The receiver will rest at its highest point on the leveling rod at this location. Sometimes, once the sod is taken up, it becomes necessary to lower this point by an inch or so, but initially finding the low point on the sod is good enough. Next is to find the highest elevation. This will be the point where the greatest amount of material needs to be subtracted or removed. Adjust the receiver on the leveling rod so that it indicates level grade at the highest elevation within the painted pool foundation. The receiver will rest at its lowest point on the leveling rod at this location. It is not wise to take material from high elevation and place on low elevation, thereby raising the correct foundation point. Water weighs 7.5 pounds per gallon, and the weight of the water could compress the foundation in areas where the foundation is more loose than areas where it is not, and leave your pool lopsided at best and broken at worst. As a rule of thumb, it is not wise to backfill on an above-ground pool more than 12 inches once it is filled with water. So if the amount of grade or point between the low elevation point or the intended point for the pool foundation is greater than 12 inches from the highest elevation point, you have the option of tapering or sloping the dirt beyond the pool foundation back while you are leveling the pool foundation to grade, so there is not a steep cliff between the backfill against the pool and the surrounding sod on the high elevation side. Once you have achieved this, set the receiver to the correct foundation point, that is, at the low elevation point of the painted circle that you found initially. You only have to get this point perfectly on the blocks that rest under each upright when the time comes. When you begin digging, understand that your goal is to achieve this correct foundation point and error on the lower elevation side of up to 1 inch. So ideally, the entirety of the pool foundation is within 1 inch, and the foundation point is the highest elevation throughout. It is manageable to add extra sand to bring up low elevation points, but less manageable to dig high elevation points down by hand. Therefore, it is better to have few points of a higher elevation than the intended foundation point than many. The same is true for extreme low elevation points. It is unrealistic to expect perfection, so bringing in extra material to fill in the low elevation points is more easily manageable than digging out the high elevation points. You can place the sod in a pile away from the pool, and the dirt either around the perimeter of the pool to backfill once the pool is complete and filled with water, and or in another location of your choosing, depending on how much dirt you have to take out. It is necessary to backfill a pool minimum of 5 inches of dirt all the way around the pool once filled with water, and no more than 2 inches of river rock size 57 or bigger after to landscape. The dirt will prevent rain from washing away the sand under your pool, and too much landscaping rocks will damage the wall during liner changes much later on. Getting the grade within an inch is the goal, and there are many ways to achieve that. If there are a few spots where the elevation is more than 1 inch below the intended point, you can use mason sand to fill in these spots later, but they ought to be few and no more than 4 inches lower at its greatest extreme. Filling in with dirt is better than using mason sand. Occasionally it is not possible to use dirt, however, for various reasons. Again, understand that when you move the receiver up the leveling rod, you are lowering the elevation point. So when the receiver is at its highest location on the leveling rod, while calculating your total grade on the painted pool foundation, that is your pool foundation point, the lowest elevation point. So the highest elevation point is located on the low end of the stick. It is counterintuitive. There can be large variations from pool to pool. This particular pool, I had to add close to double the amount of sand I would normally use because in certain parts of it is very soft and I couldn't dig it out with my equipment. And that's just what you have to deal with from time to time. And you can make do. You can double block as shown here. That's what I had to do here. So if you're not able to get it perfectly level, you can make adjustments. Just use common sense.